ladies and gentlemen. Introduction to worth. Begin by discussing the concept of worth not just in terms of material value, but in the unique gifts, potential, and purpose that God has placed inside each individual. The importance of understanding that your value is intrinsic and not dependent on external validation. Divine purpose. Every person was created with a specific purpose in mind. Your worth is tied to the unique assignment that only you can fulfill in this world. God designed you with value, and your purpose is a reflection of that design. People's limited vision. Address the fact that people may not always recognize your worth, and sometimes they might not see what God has placed in you. Their vision is limited by their own understanding, experiences, and expectations, but that doesn't diminish your value. The importance of God's perspective. Focus on the fact that God sees you in a way that no one else can. His perspective is perfect and complete. Trust in God's view of your potential and worth, regardless of what others may perceive. The trials and the hidden process. Emphasize that sometimes God allows us to go through seasons of obscurity or struggle for a reason. These trials are not an indication of your worth, but are part of the process of refining and preparing you for the purpose that will be revealed in due time. Growth and timing. Timing is crucial. There is a season for everything. And sometimes your worth needs to be hidden so that when it is revealed, it has maximum impact. Just because they don't see it now doesn't mean it's not there. Your value is unshakable. People may try to undermine or diminish your worth, but God's investment in you cannot be stolen or erased. Your worth is not subject to public opinion, societal standards, or past mistakes. Elevation through self-discovery. True recognition of your worth begins with you understanding your own value. When you know your worth in God, no one can make you feel small. Your confidence comes from within, rooted in His calling and purpose for your life. The importance of faith in your worth. Faith is key in overcoming the doubts that others may cast on you. Trusting in God's purpose for your life empowers you to remain steady in the face of rejection and misunderstanding. The fullness of your purpose will manifest. Remind your audience that the world will eventually see your worth, but more importantly, God will use your life to impact others in a mighty way. Encourage the listener to continue walking in faith, knowing that God has a plan for their life. And that plan includes the revelation of their worth in the right time. Speech God didn't let them see your worth. Introduction. There are moments in life when you feel overlooked, misunderstood, or even dismissed. People may not recognize your value or see the potential within you. But today I want to remind you of a powerful truth. God didn't let them see your worth. What they see is not all there is. There's a depth to you that only God truly understands, and the way others perceive you is not the measure of your value. Divine purpose. You were created with divine purpose, and within you is an intrinsic worth that no human can diminish. Your value is not found in the opinions of others, nor is it determined by the success or failure of your past. God's blueprint for your life is greater than any temporary circumstance. You were designed with a specific assignment, an assignment only you can fulfill. And that is where your worth is rooted. People's limited vision. We must remember that the vision of others is limited. Often they cannot see the greatness in you because they are confined by their own experiences, limitations, and perceptions. They may look at you with judgment, not understanding the depth of what God has placed within you. But let me tell you, their lack of sight doesn't diminish your worth. The truth of your value isn't contingent on their recognition. The importance of God's perspective. God sees you not as the world sees you. He sees the potential, the gifts, the purpose He embedded in you before you were even born. His vision for you is clear, complete, and perfect. You were designed for greatness. When others fail to see this, it doesn't change the fact that God has already ordained your steps. Trust God's perspective above all others. The trials and the hidden process. At times, God allows us to walk through seasons where our worth is hidden. There are moments when the world doesn't recognize our value, and we may even question our own potential. But understand this, it is not because you lack worth, it's because God is preparing you for something greater. You may not understand the process, but every trial, every challenge is refining you for the moment when your purpose will be revealed. What God is doing in you now is shaping what others will see in you later. Worth and timing. Timing is key. There is a divine order, a season for everything under the sun. If God hasn't allowed others to see your worth right now, it's because the time is not yet. The world will recognize your value when the time is right, when you are ready to carry the weight of that recognition. Trust in God's timing. Your worth is already established in heaven, and in due season, it will be revealed. Your value is unshakable. The opinions of others do not change the fact that you are valuable. People may try to undermine your worth, criticize your dreams, or belittle your potential. But listen carefully, your worth is unshakable. It is not subject to the judgment of man, the failures of your past, or the rejection of your peers. God has placed His value on you, and nothing can change that. Elevation through self-discovery. It is only when you discover your own worth that others can see it. The key to unlocking your true potential lies in understanding who you are in God. When you begin to see yourself as God sees you, you will no longer be swayed by others' opinions or their failure to recognize your greatness. Know your worth and walk in the confidence of that knowledge. The importance of faith in your worth. There will be times when the world questions your value, when the road seems long and the fruit of your labor remains unseen. But it is in those moments that you must hold on to your faith. Faith is the key that keeps you grounded in your worth when others doubt it. Trust that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating the fulfillment of His purpose in your life. The fullness of your purpose will manifest. I want to close by saying this: your worth will be made known and your purpose will be fulfilled. Though they may not see it now, there will come a day when the world recognizes the depth of your calling. And when that time comes, it won't just be a revelation for you, it will impact the lives of countless others. So hold on to your faith, remain rooted in your purpose, and walk confidently in the truth that God did not let them see your worth, because He's preparing you for something greater than they could ever imagine. Conclusion. You are valuable. You are chosen. And God has a purpose for your life that will be revealed in His perfect timing. Keep walking in faith. Keep pressing forward. The world will see your worth when the time is right. And until then, you are enough, just as you are in the eyes of your Creator. Worth is one of the most fundamental concepts in understanding who we are as individuals. It is more than just a matter of value based on possessions or achievements. Worth speaks to our identity, the intrinsic value God has placed in us from the moment of our creation. From the very beginning, God designed each person with a unique purpose, and that purpose gives us our worth. It's not something that can be earned through accomplishments or societal recognition. Rather, it's something that exists within us because we were created by the Creator Himself. In a world that often measures worth by material success, appearance, or public approval, it's easy to forget that our true worth is not based on any of these external factors. The world may try to convince us that our value is tied to the job we have, the car we drive, or the followers we accumulate. But God's perspective on worth is radically different. He sees us as priceless, regardless of our external circumstances. Our worth is not determined by our failures or even our successes. It is determined by the fact that we were made in the image of God. And that is an unshakable truth. When we fail to recognize our intrinsic worth, we begin to measure ourselves by false standards. We start comparing ourselves to others and allowing external validation to dictate how we see ourselves. This often leads to frustration, insecurity, and a constant need to prove our value to the world around us. But the reality is, when we align ourselves with God's understanding of worth, we can begin to operate from a place of confidence that transcends human approval. Knowing our worth in God means understanding that we have been created for a specific purpose, and that purpose alone defines who we are. It is not what the world says about us, but what God has declared. This knowledge frees us from the chains of external validation and allows us to walk in the fullness of who we were created to be. It empowers us to stop seeking approval from people who don't truly see us for who we are and start living in alignment with the truth of who God says we are. In the end, our worth is not found in the eyes of others, but in the heart of God. And when we understand this, we begin to live in a way that reflects our true value, not from a place of need or insecurity, but from a place of confidence, purpose, and peace. Each one of us has been created with a divine purpose, a specific reason for our existence that goes beyond the simple acts of living day to day. God, in His infinite wisdom, has designed each individual with a unique and irreplaceable purpose that only they can fulfill. This purpose isn't random, it's intentional and reflects the deep thought and care God put into your creation. The moment you were conceived, God already knew what He had planned for you, how you would contribute to the world, the people you would influence, the problems you would solve, and the lives you would touch. Your purpose is intertwined with your worth, for it is the very thing that gives you significance. Many times we look around us and try to measure our worth by the successes and accomplishments of others. But we must understand that our purpose is not meant to look like anyone else's. Each person's purpose is unique, and when we try to fit into someone else's mold, we lose sight of the greatness that lies within our own. Our purpose is not about competition or comparison. It is about living in alignment with the truth of who we are and what we were made to do. It is deeply personal, and it is a reflection of God's perfect design. Discovering and living out our purpose is a journey that begins with understanding that it exists in the first place. So many people live their lives unaware of the fact that they were created with a mission and a plan. This lack of understanding can lead to feelings of aimlessness and a constant search for meaning. But when we recognize that our purpose is not a random occurrence but a divinely inspired calling, we can begin to approach life with a sense of clarity and direction. Every step we take becomes one step closer to fulfilling that God-given purpose. God's purpose for us is never based on our limitations or failures. It is rooted in His eternal plan, which transcends time and space. We may encounter setbacks, face struggles, and even experience failure, but none of that changes the fact that God has a purpose for our lives. These challenges are not signs that we are without purpose, rather they are opportunities for growth and preparation. God often allows us to face these struggles so that we can be refined and strengthened, preparing us for the fullness of the purpose He has for us. When we come to understand that our purpose is part of a divine plan, it changes the way we view everything around us. We begin to see our challenges as stepping stones to greater things. We begin to recognize that our worth is not measured by what we've accomplished in the eyes of others, but by how closely we align with the purpose God has placed in us. This gives us a deep sense of peace, knowing that we don't have to prove our value to anyone, because our worth is confirmed in the divine purpose God has already set out for us. It is an unfortunate reality that people often fail to recognize the depth of worth in others, particularly when it comes to the things that matter most: our potential, our purpose, and our true value. While we may possess immense gifts, talents, and abilities, those around us may not always see them or appreciate them in the way that we deserve. This is not necessarily a reflection of our inadequacy or a flaw in our character. Rather, it highlights the limitations of human perception. People are often confined by their own understanding, biases, and experiences which can cloud their judgment of others. Their inability to see your worth does not diminish the reality of who you are and what you are capable of achieving. Often the world around us is influenced by superficial measures of success. People may focus on your outward appearance, your immediate circumstances, or your current position in life. They may judge you based on your failures, your mistakes, or even the past struggles you've gone through. But God doesn't judge us the way people do. He sees beyond the surface and looks at our hearts, our potential, and the destiny He has placed within us. People, however, are quick to judge based on what they can see at the moment, which is why many individuals go through life feeling undervalued or unnoticed. They may be surrounded by individuals who cannot recognize the greatness within them simply because they are too focused on the external, too constrained by their own limited perspective. The truth is, people often don't see your worth because they are not equipped to do so. Their experiences and perceptions have shaped their worldview in a way that might prevent them from recognizing your unique potential. Sometimes they are too preoccupied with their own limitations or fears to truly appreciate what is in front of them. Just as a diamond, when buried deep in the earth, cannot be recognized for its brilliance by those who don't know its value, so too may you be overlooked by those who fail to see the treasure within you. But just because they don't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. Furthermore, people may also fail to see your worth because they themselves have not yet discovered their own. It's a truth that often goes unnoticed, but the way someone sees you can be directly influenced by the way they see themselves. If they cannot recognize their own value, they may not be able to perceive yours either. It's not a reflection of your lack, but of their inability to understand the concept of worth. This is why it's so important to recognize that other people's failure to see your worth is not a reflection of who you truly are. It is merely a reflection of their own limitations, their own struggles, and their own inability to see beyond their own experiences. This principle is especially true when it comes to people who may have judged you in the past, whether it be family members, friends, or colleagues. They may have seen you as insignificant or incapable, yet that judgment was never truly about your worth, but about their inability to see you through the lens of purpose and potential. But you must remember, what others fail to see does not change the fact that you are valuable. Their judgment is based on limited information and a limited perspective, but God sees the whole picture. Even if they don't acknowledge your worth, God is working behind the scenes to bring that worth to the forefront at the appointed time. Understanding that others may not see your worth can be difficult, especially when you seek validation from those around you. But once you realize that their inability to recognize your value is not a reflection of your reality, you can begin to find peace in knowing that your worth is not dependent on external recognition. When we face moments of rejection or when others fail to see our worth, it's essential to remember that there is a higher perspective, God's perspective, that surpasses all human understanding. While others may judge us based on external factors, their opinions are often shaped by incomplete or skewed perceptions. But God's view of us is perfect, unchanging, and all-knowing. He sees us for who we truly are, not for the mistakes we've made, the struggles we've faced, or the judgments others place upon us. In God's eyes, we are not defined by our failures or our present circumstances. We are defined by the purpose He has written over our lives and the intrinsic value He has placed within us. God's perspective is never clouded by the limitations of human reasoning or the biases that often distort the way others see us. He sees our hearts, He knows our intentions, and He understands the full scope of our potential. Unlike human beings who may judge us based on our past or current situation, God looks at the entirety of our journey. He knows the end from the beginning and understands the intricate design of our lives. When the world may see a person who is struggling, God sees a person in the making, someone being shaped and refined for a greater purpose. His perspective of us is also rooted in His unconditional love. We are not loved because of what we can do, but simply because we are His creation. This love transcends all earthly standards and is not swayed by public opinion or the accolades we may receive. God's love is constant, unwavering, and founded in the truth of who He made us to be. His view of our worth is not based on how much we've accomplished or how others perceive us, but on the simple fact that He designed us with purpose and value from the beginning. This divine perspective brings a peace that human recognition cannot provide. It reminds us that our value is secured in the truth of who we are in God, not in the fleeting validation of others. When we understand that God sees us as valuable, unique, and irreplaceable, we can begin to rest in the knowledge that His plan for our lives is far greater than anything others can see or understand. God is not concerned with the approval of the masses. He is concerned with the fulfillment of His plan for us. His perspective is the one that truly matters, and His view of us will never falter or change. Additionally, God sees the potential within us that no one else may notice. While people are often limited by what they can immediately observe our current position, the difficulties we face, or the challenges we encounter, God looks beyond the surface. He sees the gifts, the talents, and the strength we carry, even when others may overlook or underestimate us. He knows what we are capable of achieving and will work in us and through us to bring about His purpose, even if it's not immediately visible to those around us. This divine perspective also invites us to trust in God's timing. Even if others cannot see your worth or the greatness within you now, God's timing is perfect. He will reveal your purpose when the time is right, when you are fully prepared to handle the magnitude of what He has placed within you. Understanding that God's timing is always better than our own allows us to patiently wait for the season when the world will see what God already knows about us. We can rest in the assurance that we are not forgotten or overlooked in God's eyes, and that His plan for us is unfolding exactly as it should. When we embrace this divine perspective, we are free from the anxiety of trying to prove our worth to others. We no longer need to live for the approval of those around us, because we understand that our worth is already established by God. His view of us is the only one that matters, and it is grounded in eternal truth, love, and purpose. This understanding gives us the strength to continue moving forward, even when the world may not recognize or acknowledge us. God's perspective allows us to move confidently in the direction of our purpose, knowing that He sees our value and will reveal it in His perfect time. At times, life can feel like a series of trials and challenges, and it's easy to believe that these hardships are a sign of our lack of worth. However, in God's economy, trials are not an indication that we are insignificant or unworthy. They are a necessary part of the process that prepares us for the purpose He has designed for us. Just as precious metals are refined by fire to bring out their true brilliance, so too are we refined through the struggles we face. Our trials, though painful, are not punishments. They are part of the divine process of shaping us, strengthening us, and preparing us for the greater things God has in store for us. When we encounter difficulties or experience seasons where we feel overlooked or undervalued, it is important to remember that God is working in ways we may not yet understand. It's easy to become discouraged when the world doesn't seem to recognize our value, or when we feel as if we're constantly fighting against forces that seem to diminish us. But God is using these experiences to mold us into the people He created us to be. These seasons of difficulty are not meant to break us, they are meant to build us. In fact, they are often the very things that refine our character, sharpen our resolve, and increase our capacity to carry out the purpose God has called us to. Many times when we are facing adversity, we may feel like giving up or questioning our worth. It can feel as though our struggles are endless and that the world has forgotten us. But this is where faith comes in. Faith is the belief that even when we cannot see the end result, God is still working behind the scenes. Just because you are in the midst of a challenge or a season of hardship does not mean that your worth has diminished. In fact, it often means the opposite. God is taking this time to refine you, to help you grow, and to prepare you for the very purpose He has already established in you. The fire may burn, but it's refining the gold inside of you. Moreover, God doesn't allow us to face trials without equipping us for them. While the process may seem difficult, the fact remains that every trial carries with it the tools necessary for overcoming it. These tools may come in the form of strength, wisdom, patience, or perseverance, qualities that may not be developed in times of ease but are cultivated through the challenges we face. It is in these moments that we come to understand who we truly are, not through the eyes of others, but through the eyes of God. We begin to see that the value He has placed in us is not something that can be extinguished by hardship. On the contrary, our worth is strengthened by it. Furthermore, God's refining process often requires that we go through periods of obscurity. There are times when we may feel hidden, as though our worth is not being recognized or validated by others. We might feel like we are working tirelessly, but no one is taking notice of the effort or the potential within us. But remember, God is never absent during these times. When others do not see your worth, it does not mean that God has forgotten you. He is actively preparing you for the future, for a time when your purpose will be revealed to the world. Your value remains constant, even when it is not yet visible to those around you. The hidden season is often the preparation for a greater season of revelation, where God will bring forth the gifts and talents He has placed within you for the world to see. As we walk through life, we often seek approval and recognition from the people around us. It's natural to want others to see our worth, to acknowledge our efforts, and to validate our existence. But the truth is, human validation is fleeting and unreliable. People may praise us today and criticize us tomorrow. Their opinions can be influenced by their moods, biases, or even their own insecurities, which makes them an unreliable source for affirming our value. Our worth, however, is not dependent on their approval. It's important to understand that we were never meant to live for the recognition of others. We were created to live in alignment with God's truth about us. God is the ultimate source of our validation, and His view of us is unchanging. People may not always see our worth, and at times they may even dismiss us, overlook us, or fail to recognize our value altogether. Yet this does not diminish who we are. The validation we truly need comes from God alone. He is the one who created us, who designed us with purpose and intention, and who knows our true potential. While others may struggle to see the fullness of our worth, God sees us completely. He knows our hearts, our desires, and the destiny He has placed within us. This truth allows us to operate from a place of internal security, knowing that we are already validated by our Creator. When we look to human approval as the measure of our worth, we become dependent on others' shifting opinions and judgments. This dependency leads to a constant cycle of striving, performing, and hoping for recognition. But when we begin to understand that God's validation is all we need, we become free from this cycle. We no longer feel the need to prove ourselves to others or to constantly seek approval from people who don't fully understand us. We can rest in the peace that comes from knowing we are already approved, chosen, and loved by the Creator of the universe. Additionally, relying on human validation often leads to a dangerous cycle of comparison. We begin to measure our worth based on how we stack up against others. This comparison traps us in a constant state of insecurity, making us feel either superior or inferior to those around us. We compare our successes, our possessions, our relationships, and even our physical appearance, and in doing so, we lose sight of the unique worth we have in God. But when we shift our focus to God's perspective, comparison loses its power. We begin to understand that we are each uniquely designed with our own set of gifts, talents, and purposes. There is no need to compare ourselves to others because our worth is not based on what we do in comparison to anyone else. It's based on who we are in God. When we stop seeking validation from others, we also stop seeking validation from our circumstances. The world may praise us when things are going well and criticize us when we fail. But neither of these external judgments has the power to define our worth. Whether we are experiencing success or facing challenges, God's view of us remains constant. Our value is not measured by our achievements or our failures, but by the fact that we are created in His image. Our worth is intrinsic and it doesn't change based on external factors. In a world that constantly pushes us to conform, to measure up to societal standards, and to seek the approval of others, it's easy to forget that we were never meant to live according to the expectations of the world. God's plan for us is far greater than anything we could achieve by seeking the approval of others. When we understand that our worth is rooted in Him, we can live confidently in who He has created us to be. We no longer have to prove ourselves to anyone because we know that we are already valued by the one who matters most. And this understanding frees us to live with purpose and boldness, knowing that God's opinion is the only one that counts. The journey to recognizing our worth often involves coming to terms with the reality that not everyone will understand us or the greatness that lies within us. Some people will fail to see our potential, whether due to their own limitations, biases, or misunderstandings. In these moments, it's crucial to realize that the inability of others to perceive our value does not diminish who we truly are. Their limited perception cannot define us. Our worth is not contingent upon the understanding or acceptance of others. In fact, sometimes the very people who fail to see our worth are the ones who are unable to see beyond their own experiences, fears, or insecurities. This is not a reflection of our inadequacy, but of their own limited ability to understand the fullness of our potential. When we go through life seeking recognition and validation from others, we often find ourselves discouraged and disheartened when people fail to acknowledge our worth. This disappointment is natural, as we desire to be seen, appreciated, and understood. However, it's vital to understand that God's purpose for our lives is not dependent on others' recognition of us. The fact that others may not see your worth or the greatness within you does not change your true value. There are times when God will allow us to be misunderstood, overlooked, or even rejected, but in those moments He is working in ways we cannot always see. He may be preparing us for a season where the world will recognize the fullness of what He has placed within us. But until that time comes, we must trust in His divine plan. The inability of others to see your worth can often be a sign that God is protecting you from the influence of those who may not understand or appreciate your purpose. Sometimes people can be well-meaning but still fail to see the greatness in us, especially when it is still being developed. Just like a seed must be planted and nurtured before it blooms into something beautiful, our potential must be cultivated and refined before it is fully revealed. If others were to see it too early, they might misjudge us or place unfair expectations on us. God's timing is always perfect, and there are seasons where being unseen or misunderstood is a protective measure that allows us to grow and mature in preparation for what is to come. This is particularly important when it comes to family, friends, or even colleagues who may not fully understand the call of God on our lives. They may be unable to grasp the depth of what God has placed within us simply because they do not have the same perspective, experiences, or understanding. Just because those closest to us don't see our worth doesn't mean it isn't there. They might see our current struggles, our mistakes, or even our lack of progress in certain areas, but these things do not define us. God sees the end from the beginning, and His perspective is far more complete and accurate than anyone else's. Sometimes people don't see our worth because they are limited by their own experiences and worldviews. They may struggle to perceive something they haven't yet encountered or understand a vision that's beyond their own. In those cases, it's essential not to take their inability to see us for who we truly are personally. Their lack of understanding isn't a reflection of our potential, but of their inability to fully comprehend what is unfolding within us. It is crucial to learn to move forward even when others do not recognize the value we carry. When we focus on what God says about us, we are able to continue with confidence, knowing that He is the one who truly sees and knows our worth. This is why it is so important to build our identity and sense of value not on the opinions of others, but on the truth of who God says we are. While people may fail to see the gifts, talents, and potential within us, God sees everything. He has created us with a purpose, and His understanding of our value is perfect. His plans for us are greater than we can imagine, and the fact that others may not see it right now doesn't mean it's not real. As we journey through life, we must recognize that God's plan for us is often beyond what we can currently comprehend. While others may fail to see our worth or potential, it's important to understand that God's timing for revealing our purpose is perfectly designed. God's plans for us are not always revealed in an instant. Instead, they unfold over time as we grow and develop into the individuals He has created us to be. What others may not see now, what they may overlook or even dismiss, is often something that will be revealed at the right moment, in the fullness of time, when we are prepared to step into the destiny that God has already set before us. People tend to look at our present state and make judgments based on what they can see at that moment. If we are struggling, if we are going through a season of lack, or if we haven't yet achieved certain milestones, others may conclude that we are not worthy or capable of something greater. However, God's plans are not limited by what we have accomplished or what we are currently experiencing. He sees the bigger picture, and He is working behind the scenes, preparing us for the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead. While others may judge us based on our present circumstances, God is already at work shaping our future. God's timing is often different from our own. We may want our worth to be recognized immediately, and we may be tempted to rush ahead, seeking validation from others. But God knows that true worth is not simply about being recognized by the world, it's about being shaped and prepared for the future He has planned for us. If others cannot see our worth in this moment, it's often because God is still refining us. He is still preparing us for something greater. His timing is perfect, and the right moment will come when the world will finally see what He has placed within us. Furthermore, there are times when God allows us to go through seasons of obscurity or invisibility, because this is where He does His greatest work in us. It is in the hidden places, in the quiet moments, where we are shaped, built up, and prepared for the public display of the gifts He has given us. When we are hidden, we are being prepared for greater influence and greater responsibility. People may not see our worth in these moments, but God is laying the foundation for something far greater than what they can comprehend. In God's timing, our worth will be revealed in ways that will far exceed our expectations. What others fail to see in us today, God will bring to light at the appointed time. Whether it's a hidden talent, an untapped potential, or a calling that hasn't yet been fully realized, God will reveal it when He knows we are ready. He understands the right time for everything, and He will place us in the situations that will allow our purpose to unfold. Sometimes others are simply not ready to see what God has already prepared for us. They may not have the vision to understand the potential that lies within us, but in God's perfect timing, everything will fall into place. This understanding helps to free us from the frustration of feeling unseen or overlooked. When we trust in God's perfect timing, we are able to embrace the process. When we find ourselves in situations where others do not recognize or appreciate our worth, it's essential to understand that God's view of us is not dependent on the opinions or recognition of the world. The world often operates by its own standards, measuring worth by external achievements, appearance, or social status. But God doesn't look at us the way the world does. He sees the heart, the intentions, and the intrinsic value He has placed within us. This divine perspective frees us from the need for worldly approval and allows us to rest in the truth that our worth is secured by God, not by human judgment. In a society where success and value are often determined by public acknowledgement and visible accomplishments, it's easy to become discouraged when others overlook our worth. The applause, the promotions, and the outward signs of recognition can seem like the only true measures of success. However, these external markers do not define our true worth. God's perspective is far deeper and more profound. He sees the potential that lies within us, even if it has not yet been realized by others. His assessment of our worth is rooted in His love for us and the unique purpose He has set before us. This is why it's so important to separate our identity from the shifting opinions of others. People may not see the full extent of our capabilities, and they may fail to recognize the greatness that lies within us. But that does not make us any less valuable. God's view of us is eternal, and His plan for our lives is not swayed by the changing tides of public opinion. What the world fails to recognize, God sees with clarity and understanding. He created us with intention, and He knows the unique value we bring to the world. When we understand that our worth is established by God and not by human recognition, we are freed from the burden of trying to prove ourselves to others. We no longer have to measure up to someone else's standards or live for their approval. Instead, we live with the assurance that we are already loved, chosen, and valued by the Creator. Our worth is not based on what we have accomplished or how others perceive us. It is based on the fact that God created us with a purpose, and His plans for us are far greater than anything the world can offer. In addition, God's view of our worth is not limited by the immediate circumstances we face. The world often judges us based on our present situation, whether that's our financial standing, our social status, or our level of success. However, God's assessment is not bound by these temporary conditions. While the world may look at us and see failure, setbacks, or struggles, God sees the full picture. He sees the potential for growth, the capacity for greatness, and the future He is shaping for us. His understanding of our worth is not tied to our current state, but to the eternal truth of who we are in Him. When we embrace the truth that God's view of us is the one that truly matters, we are liberated from the need for validation from others. We stop seeking approval from people who cannot see the fullness of who we are, and we start living confidently in the truth that God knows exactly what He has placed within us. we can rest assured that our worth is unshakable because it is anchored in God's unchanging love and His divine plan for our lives. Even in times of difficulty or rejection, when others fail to see our value, we can trust that God is working behind the scenes, shaping us, refining us, and preparing us for what is to come. His perspective of us is not limited by what others see. It is rooted in an eternal understanding of who we are and what we are capable of achieving. The world may fail to see our worth, but God never will. And when His purpose for our lives is revealed, it will be evident to all that we were always valuable, always worthy, and always loved. When we live our lives according to the standards and expectations of the world, we often find ourselves in a constant struggle to prove our worth. Whether it's through achievements, possessions, status, or appearance, we measure our value based on what we have or what others think of us. This external validation, however, is fleeting and unreliable. People may praise us one day and criticize us the next, leaving us feeling confused and uncertain about who we truly are. When we are driven by the desire for validation from the world, it's easy to lose sight of our intrinsic value. We begin to measure ourselves by how others see us or by how we compare to those around us. However, when we understand that our worth is defined by God, we are freed from the trap of seeking approval from others. God's assessment of us is not based on what we do, how we look, or what we possess. It's based on His love for us, His unique design for our lives, and the purpose He has set before us. God does not love us because of what we have done or what we can achieve. He loves us simply because we are His creation. This unshakable love is the foundation of our worth, and it cannot be taken away by the opinions of others or by external circumstances. One of the most liberating truths we can grasp is that our worth is not contingent upon our ability to conform to the world's expectations. The world tells us that we must be successful, powerful, wealthy, or influential to be valuable, but God's standard is different. God values us for who we are, not for what we do. When we accept this truth, we are no longer bound by the need to meet the world's standards of success. We begin to live freely, not striving to impress others, but simply living out the purpose God has placed within us. This shift in mindset also frees us from the constant pressure of comparison. The world often encourages us to compare ourselves to others, whether it's in our careers, our relationships, or our achievements. But this comparison is toxic because it always leads to feelings of inadequacy. We either feel superior when we measure up or inferior when we don't. But when we understand that our worth is not defined by others, we can stop comparing ourselves and start embracing who we are. God made us unique with different gifts, strengths, and purposes. There is no need to compare our journey to someone else's because we are all on our own individual path, created to fulfill our specific calling. When we stop seeking validation from others and start recognizing that our worth is anchored in God's love, we experience true freedom. We no longer have to perform for the approval of others or worry about whether they see our value. Instead, we can focus on living out our purpose, knowing that our worth is not tied to our accomplishments or the recognition we receive. This understanding brings peace because we are no longer driven by external pressures or expectations. We are free to be who God created us to be, and to live out His plan for our lives without fear of judgment or rejection. God's view of our worth is not based on the fleeting and often superficial standards of the world. His perspective is eternal and unchanging. No matter what others think of us, no matter how the world perceives us, God's opinion is the one that truly matters. He sees us as valuable, worthy, and capable of fulfilling the purpose He has set before us. When we internalize this truth, we begin to live confidently, knowing that our worth is secure in His love. No failure, no mistake, and no criticism can ever change the fact that we are precious in His sight, and that He has a plan for our lives that is greater than anything the world can offer. Understanding that our worth is not defined by what others see in us or how the world values us allows us to walk with confidence and peace. We can stand firm in the knowledge that God has already determined our worth and His plan for us is perfect. The recognition of our value does not depend on the applause of the world, but on the love of our Creator. And when we live from this place of understanding, we are able to fulfill our purpose with boldness, knowing that we are living according to the eternal truth of who God has called us to be. In conclusion, it's crucial to understand that our worth is not determined by the fleeting opinions of others, nor is it tied to the world's standards of success. People may fail to see the fullness of who we are, and we may face seasons where we feel overlooked or misunderstood. But God, in His perfect wisdom, knows our value intimately. He created us with purpose, and His view of us is unchanging and eternal. When we shift our focus from seeking the approval of others to aligning with God's perspective, we are freed from the constant pressure of comparison, striving, and seeking validation. Our true worth is anchored in the unshakable love of our Creator, and His plan for our lives is far greater than anything the world could offer. We are precious in His sight, regardless of the recognition we receive from others. God has a destiny for each of us, and even when others don't see it or understand it, His purpose will unfold in His perfect timing. So walk confidently in the truth that you are valuable, worthy, and deeply loved by God. Your worth is not up for debate, it is secure in Him. And that truth will carry you through every season, every challenge, and every triumph. Thank you.